And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Sarah Breskman Cosme, best-selling author, master hypnotist, and a level 3 practitioner of Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnosis technique. Today she's here to talk about her new book, A Hypnotist's Journey to Avalon, and more. Sarah, welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
I want to kind of backtrack a little bit since some people may be meeting you for the first time. What inspired you to become a hypnotist?
Oh my gosh. Well, to make it short, it was just that I had so many problems when I was growing up. So I was really just trying to help myself. And it led me to traditional therapy. So I essentially just wanted to become a psychologist, actually. I wanted to become a psychologist to help people so that they wouldn't suffer like I had suffered with all my problems because I was really overweight. I had phobias and fears, and I had OCD that was so debilitating that it would take me like an hour to leave the house. I mean, I would have to flick on and off light switches. And it was just, I didn't know what was going on with me because I was just a child at the time. But I was put into therapy and then talking to the therapist, I learned these things. It didn't really go away, but I just was able to soak up, what the therapist did. And so I wanted to be a psychologist, essentially. But my life changed when I went to college for the first time because it was like, for Thanksgiving break, I went back home to my parents' house and I walked through the door, and there's a mirror that you can see when you walk through my parents' house. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was just shocked because I hadn't really realized it. But while I was away for only a couple months, I had lost a considerable amount of weight. And I also, in that moment, it dawned on me, oh my gosh, I had forgotten to have my problems when I was away because I was so busy with school. And then I was literally just staring at myself in the mirror. You know, those moments where your whole life changes just really quickly? I was looking at myself thinking, what did I do? And then I realized, wow, I had changed my environment. And because of that, I had changed my thought patterns. And because my thought patterns had changed, I had literally changed my life. And let me just tell you, I was eating the same foods, if not worse. You know, I was a freshman in college, having pizza and everything, but I lost like a ton of weight. And I didn't have OCD or anything while I was gone. And I noticed I didn't need those things anymore. And so I've never, if you saw my car, you would not believe that I had one, so OCD, but I did. And so I just thought, wow, there are so many things that I'm hoping I can help people with. So, long story short, I graduated and then I had an internship before going to graduate school. So I did not become a psychologist because while I did that internship, I felt like everything I learned in college was a lie. I mean, this was just my own experience, and I'm not knocking the field. This is just my own experience for a reason. It was just because I was not meant to do this work, become a psychologist. I was meant to become um, a hypnotherapist. So I just felt like I thought that this was like the leading edge of thought. I mean, just to give you an idea of myself, I'm just a perfectionist. I want to be really, really good before I help people. So, I mean, I got like the highest grade in my psychopharmacology class. I got like straight A's. I was just really gung ho to help people. Essentially, it led to more and more things. And now I'm this past life regressionist, but I would have never believed you if you had told me I would be doing these things at all when I was younger.
Have you ever regressed yourself or have somebody regress you and learned that this was what you decided to do pre-birth?
Yes, and not only that, but because I do this job almost every day, and what really is fun for me is my I have these hypnosis subjects that I use for my information, for my books, and to find out, knowledge that the subconscious of these people. So this is essentially what I do is I take any person and I regress them to the very deepest level of trance, and then I can speak directly, to their higher self, their subconscious. And when you regress anyone, it doesn't matter who they are, you reach the same place when you go deep enough. You reach universal consciousness, and that saying we are all one is really actually very, very true. So that part of my hypnosis subjects has told me through multiple people that I went through all this for a reason. And I've learned that every single thing you learn, everything single thing you do, and every single problem you ever have helps you in your life. And nothing is ever by accident. So every single thing I went through, I appreciate it now, although it was really terrible going through it at the time.
How do you avoid making sure that you're not leading a person so you are getting accurate information?
I love that question. That's very, very important. So I never suggest anything. I'm just literally basically listening to them. And I always ask their higher self about, whatever they're talking about. I never say, okay, let's go to Atlantis or Lemuria or Avalon. It always just comes to me. And that's the same way I go about writing my books. People are always asking me, when are you going to write about this or that? I never know what I'm going to write about because I'm not the one writing it. It comes through multiple clients when they're deep under hypnosis. And it's like this story. And it's so interesting to me because when we were talking earlier, before the interview, I was telling you that I'm somewhat of a skeptic. Like it has to be proven to me. And so there's no doubt in my mind that this is happening because it is happening and because I'm documenting it. Because I just don't know how there can't be some magical force or something behind the scenes pulling these people together to come and have a session with me when they don't know one another and they don't know what I'm working on.
Is it safe to get hypnotherapy?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yes, it's actually very, very safe. And you can feel that right away because essentially what's happening is you're merging with your divine essence. So you feel very, very powerful. In fact, that's something people notice right away when they're going into these type of sessions. They feel more connected with that divine essence. It's the same state and feeling as when you're just falling asleep at night or waking up in the morning. That's the deep theta state. And in that state, you're more connected with your divine self. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes people can't fall asleep, is because there's something blocking them from merging with that part of them that is their true self. So if they're, fighting something or they're not really in alignment with themselves, then that can actually cause problems falling asleep. So it's very similar to that. It's just opening yourself up to merge with yourself, and you feel very protected in that state. Nothing could ever happen to you in that state.
Is it easy to hypnotize somebody?
It's extremely easy. Anybody could be hypnotized. It's just like falling asleep at night or waking up in the morning. If you can just imagine having someone sitting next to you in the morning when you wake up and just exploring your dream. You could go deeper into these realms. You could find out anything. There's so much available in that state. And all you're really doing is quieting your mind and you're tuning into yourself. And it's extremely profound and powerful.
Do dreams correlate with any of the information that you get from hypnotherapy?
Definitely. I always ask my clients if they've ever had a strange dream, a reoccurring dream, because those are messages, or even vivid dreams. A lot of times, if it's really vivid and you don't forget it, then it's very important. And that's something to look at too. So yes, it can. It depends on the type of dream because some people, everybody can astral travel and everyone does. They shift into different dimensions when they're dreaming, when they're not, consciously aware. But it depends on what the dream is because they could be consciously remembering, just going over their life or something like that. And that's different.
Now, you're a level 3 practitioner, and I believe that there are only like 20 or 30 of you on the planet. Is that correct?
I think it's raised now. I think it's more like 40 now, but yeah, it's still somewhat of a small number. To be a level 3, you basically take a very intensive test where you're just monitored to make sure what you're doing is like Dolores Cannon's method. And then every 2 years, you send in a video submission, and then you're just checked and monitored to see, how well you're doing. It's very helpful, actually. Keeps you on track.
Was there one moment early on in your career where you witnessed something and then you could confirm it and you were like, my gosh, this stuff is for real?
Yeah, many times. I think the first time that happened, I had this client and under hypnosis, she was, she came because she wanted to find out what was going on with her pelvis. And as she's under hypnosis and I'm speaking to her higher self, all of a sudden, so she's in front of me, and I got this on recording. It was so crazy. She's in front of me, and all I hear is pop, 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 pop. Like she's laying flat. So she's not moving or stretching. And then I said, "What's happening?" And her higher self said, "Oh, we realigned her spine." And then I thought, oh my gosh, like she didn't even have to move.
Can you give us an example of the strangest thing you've seen happen? Or not happen, but the strangest thing somebody's told you?
There's nothing like the first time something happens that really kind of shocks you, but I'll never forget when my friend, who was also another mom, came for a session, who didn't really know anything about, extraterrestrials or anything. And as I asked to speak to her higher self, uh, an extraterrestrial started speaking to me and just started talking about their home planet, nothing that I knew she would ever know. And it was just mind blowing to me because I realized that people are it's really interesting, but people are so connected to all these different versions of ourselves that can speak through ourselves when we're in that state, that it's almost like a radio. And I guess even though I see this stuff all the time, it's still really exciting and mind blowing. But the most bizarre, gosh, the weirdest thing, I think, maybe one of the weirdest things was this client that remembered being a dragon
Hmm.
and living on this island in the South Pacific. And then as we're moving through the life, we find out that a group of extraterrestrials came and cloaked this island, and that the island still exists, but people can't see it, and it still has dragons on it. And to find out there's all these land masses that still exist.
That's amazing. It would be even more amazing if we could find it.
Yeah, but I guess we can't.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, how common is extraterrestrial involvement within hypnosis?
It's very, very common. Well, it really just depends. It depends on basically what person I have in front of me, because some people are not really connected with extraterrestrials that much at all. Some people are very much more connected with like fairies and inner earth type beings, or, they're more connected and it's more important for them to see human lives on the planet, but it is very common, to answer your question.
At any point in your career, after learning and experiencing all these things, did it ever kind of rock your own personal foundation and give you some sort of like existential crisis or anything like that?
Maybe. I mean, I used to believe that there was so much we had to work on as far as manifesting. I used to think I needed to work hard, I needed to try really hard. And then I've started to understand that there's nothing that you need to do. In fact, some people actually have physical symptoms because they try so hard to manifest, when really they need to just relax and allow the universe to unfold the way it's supposed to unfold. And I think what really rocked my world was the understanding that everyone creates their own reality. So yes, there are certain times when it seems like the timelines can merge, and there does seem to be some co creation as far as timelines, but that doesn't even really matter because if a person doesn't believe in any of them, then their reality could literally be totally different. And that just kind of rocks my world because sometimes now that I understand this to a different degree, because I've heard this so many times through the subconscious of people, now it's like I I realize that the most important thing for me to do is really work on my own belief systems and choose what I want to believe in. And it's that simple that nothing is really difficult or, you know, it's not really scary. It's not, nothing ever happens to your soul. You're always okay. You're always watched. But just how much programming we've received, I think is also really interesting. And just to see for myself how programmed I am, that's also very interesting.
You said that we're always watched.
Oh, yeah.
By who?
Oh my gosh, people have a team around them, especially right now. I mean, there's so many beings that are always trying to talk to my clients when they're under hypnosis, just letting them know that they're not alone, that they're always being helped. And even like loved ones trying to tell, my clients, look, I've been putting feathers in your path, or, you know, and by their higher self, because you always have this divine protector. Your higher self is in a sense kind of like source, because it's a fractal. You are a fractal of source, but it's like source with the fractal as your higher self, and then here you are, but you're still connected. You are still source. So everyone has a huge team.
Well, your new book is called A Hypnotist's Journey to Avalon. What or where is Avalon?
Oh my gosh, it's really interesting because it seems like Avalon is multiple things. I thought Avalon was that place where King Arthur lived, and where, that place in the UK. But it's not just that place. Some people in their subconscious memories consider it like another realm, and some people consider it like there's another planet. It's really interesting because there's so many different levels to Avalon. When I was working on this book, I was just trying to find all of them because I thought, oh, wow, there's so many different things that people in their subconscious memories consider Avalon. But it seems like it's mostly like a consciousness, like there's a consciousness of Avalon. And that seems to be where the fairies reside, and where a lot of these beings that are more like fairy like come in and out of this beautiful realm that people would consider Avalon.
So, did you write this book from people's hypnotherapy sessions and what they revealed to you?
Yes, actually, for this book, the way I go about writing my book is a little bit different. I do find the people that come to me because they're coming for a session, but they are bringing a piece of the story. So originally, I didn't know I would write a book about Avalon, but what happened was I was, just to make this short, this woman named Christy. Christy is the main hypnosis subject I have for this book. she saw me on an interview and thought that I worked with her. And she watched the interview thinking, what is this person that works with me doing on this interview? And then she came to understand that she didn't know me, but everything I was talking about was so familiar because I was talking about another client who had this brain condition, and I was talking about Atlantis and this person named Christy. It was a past life of my client. That's what I was talking about. And then the current Christy just started becoming enthralled because she's like, wait a minute, I've had these recurring dreams about this place that this person is talking about. And my name is Christy, and I have the same brain condition. So she wanted to get in touch with me because she just all of a sudden had so many questions. But she never watched any type of show like this. Like, she was into sports and fitness. So this is very new. And the fact that it even popped up on her computer was random to begin with. So she went to contact me, and I didn't have any sessions available, but she saw I had a workshop available in the Keys, and she thought, how can I like justify going to this workshop on just a whim, you know? So she went to her garden to try to think if she should go to the workshop or not. And in her garden, she found these jugs sticking up out of the ground full of coins, and they equaled the amount of my workshop. So she booked my workshop. And if this isn't as, it gets crazier because it always is crazy, you know, should be a different word for that. But so she booked the workshop, but her brain condition was worsening. And she wanted to try to go to the workshop, but she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to make it. So she asked if I had a session available for this particular day that she chose. And she emailed me. And so I emailed her back, I'm sorry, I'm fully booked. And right when I did that, my client for that day canceled and sent me an email of them canceling. So I, let Christy take that session because I knew she really needed it. She wanted to come to the workshop. So in Christy's first session is where, as she's under hypnosis, I felt like she transported to this other lifetime. I mean, she really did. She was such an amazing hypnosis subject because she could recount in so many details this past life of this woman in the Middle Ages, this woman named Alice. And so this woman named Alice in Christie's past life in the Middle Ages is talking about all these things and being connected to these red crystals, and how her mother had these red crystals that came from whales, and how they were connected to Atlantis. And then she started talking about the fairy realm. And then she started talking about this place that I had been working on previously, but I hadn't told anyone. And then I realized, wow, we're starting to go back to where I left off with the other past life client. And then I get to her higher self, and I'm asking her higher self, why did you show Christy this lifetime? And they said that I hadn't finished getting all the information with the other Christy. So they sent me a new Christy. And that this information was really important for the world to understand now. So basically, she needed to pick up where I left off. But she could have never known this, because how could anybody know? So we decided to meet and do another session and learn more about Alice, the Middle Ages, and this place called Avalon. And she kept talking about this realm called Avalon and how everything, her heritage was very connected to these beings that they called the light elves. They felt like they were descendants from the light elves. And the light elves considered themselves descendants from the earth, because whenever I asked, they always said, we don't consider ourselves extraterrestrial in any way. We were birthed from the womb of the inner earth. We were birthed from their mother Gaia, is what they kept saying. And they really were teaching things about basically how this is flowing through many people's bloodline and how different bloodlines are starting to become more activated. And so anyway, in Alice's past life, she kept saying, I married the nephew um, of King Edward, and she, gave a lot of specifics. And towards the end, I went to go try to find this Alice person because if she had married into royalty whatsoever, I must be able to find her. So I searched through records and I looked up who could have possibly been named Alice, and I found her. I found her. Her name was Alice de Lacy. She was the Countess of Lincoln, and everything matched up except the Alice in this past life. There were a couple things that were different because Alice said that history had some things wrong. So it was really quite fascinating to learn all this information.
When I was a teenager, I used to really be into the King Arthur mythology and the movie Excalibur and stuff like that. For people like me who have that interest, is it possible that we had a lifetime in Avalon?
Oh my gosh, definitely. I think there's no coincidence when anyone has an interest in anything. I think it's just leading them back to rediscover something and take that information and learn that information again. King Arthur was so fascinating because while I'm working on this book, just like all the other books, all of a sudden I have a client who, under hypnosis, can remember being Merlin. I know it sounds like whether or not that's true or not, it was really pretty interesting to speak with Merlin because Merlin, according to this client, higher self, was saying that he made a deal with King Arthur before King Arthur was born to kind of change the consciousness at that time. And so Merlin was responsible basically for Excalibur. So he worked closely with the fairy realm. He could go in and out of dimensions, and he was able to basically barter with them to get Excalibur. And it was always made for King Arthur. So when people in their memories remember him like holding this sword, it would actually bend around his hand. So it felt lightweight to him, but no one else could touch it because when people remember touching it, they remember they would feel sick. And so everybody um, in their memories that I was working on this book with, they remembered when they would pick it up or try to take it out of the stone, even that they would feel sick. But it was really interesting how in King Arthur's time that he worked with Merlin and how they had a wizard like that, basically. It wasn't uncommon to have sort of like an oracle or a person that was really working in between realms. It was actually much more common back in the day. And Merlin was so fascinating because it was really interesting talking to him about how he trained like the Knights of the Round Table and the different techniques that they would use. Like they had to learn from Merlin different breathing techniques to feel protected. And they also had to do different practices, like in order to be fully present so that they didn't feel fear when they were fighting. It was really, really interesting. But I just learned all kinds of things.
Earlier, you mentioned that there is some important information that needs to be released from that time period. What information is so important?
Mostly that we have forgotten magic. So everybody has magic available to them, and everyone is magical being. And so we're really supposed to reclaim this, start to work with the elements again, start to work with the fairies again. There's actually a lot of benefit in starting to work with fairies, but only if you have good intentions. If you have good intentions and you want to work with nature, work with the elements, there are a lot of positive benefits that can really come of that. And developing those magical abilities, we're supposed to really start to come back online as a human being and start to work with all the elements and the subtle energies around us, work with nature, and become more of like that divine self that we're really supposed to become, because humanity is really still playing very small. And as we start to reclaim these things, start to awaken and activate our bloodlines, so to speak, we're going to become more magical creatures. And when people look into the future, they see that we could not only go back to our ancient ways, the ways about, working with nature and these elements, but we're becoming more magical creatures. So it's just because this ancient this ancient knowledge is so important, because it needs to be understood as we move through our future, because a lot of people don't really understand what the ancient ways are or what exactly they need to start tuning into. And so that's basically what they were sharing, is how to tune into it, what sort of things were done before, what kind of practices, and just how to start going about that.
Did any of your clients talk about the Holy Grail?
Yes. So, I was under the impression that the Holy Grail was symbolic. That's just what I thought. But while I was working on this book, I had another really amazing hypnosis subject who came in, like everybody else, as a client. And when she was under hypnosis, she remembered working with the Knights Templar. And she remembered very specifically, and the details were astounding. I mean, we could even find out her name. Um, she remembered working with the Knights Templar, and one of the times that they were working with them, they were transported. Her job was basically, she was a man, and his job was basically to transport artifacts that the Knights Templar would secure. And she was like um a seaman, so she was just a crew on this boat. And so they would transport artifacts, but one of the days they were transporting the Holy Grail and this candelabra that they had got from King Solomon. And the Knights Templar normally didn't come on these missions to transport this treasure to where they were hiding it in Nova Scotia. But on this particular day, the Knights Templar did come because they knew it was very, very important treasure. And the thing was that you could feel this Holy Grail, according to my client's memories. And she remembered that if you trace that Holy Grail back even further, that it had a lot of special properties, because in a sense, every civilization, I mean, we've had so many different resets, but every civilization always has some sacred artifact that never gets destroyed, that's passed from civilization to civilization. And the Holy Grail is one of them, according to my clients. And so it will be, found again when the treasure is ready to be, when we can have this type of treasure again, because it's very powerful. It's not just a chalice. It actually has a lot of different properties, just like Excalibur does. So it doesn't come from this particular realm. And what my clients remember is that when people were using the Holy Grail, they were using it in a different way than drinking anything in particular out of it. For the most part, it seems like what they were doing was drinking the spirit. So they would pass it around in a circle, and as they were drinking of each other's spirit from this grail, then it would all of a sudden energetically start to activate the group, and it would create this flower of life grid pattern. And then it would kind of like boost them up, and they would all of a sudden see the other side. So it wasn't that they were searching or getting eternal life in this lifetime. They were seeing that they already had eternal life. They were seeing the truth of everything in the fabric of reality. And they were seeing that we actually come from, somewhere else. We all come from this other side.
What other ancient artifacts have your clients revealed to you?
Well, there's a lot, but one of them are these red crystals that seem to come from somewhere else, another realm possibly, that have been transported through, Lemuria, Atlantis times, even before then, and come up. They were hidden in Egypt for a while, and then they were hidden in Scotland as just passed off as the crown jewels. And then now they're also hidden in Nova Scotia on this island. Some of the most important treasure that we have are these books. They're like these books that have been transcribed into Old English, and they're leather bound, and they have like special properties of crystals with on them, braided into them. And these books basically tell all our history. And at some point, those will also be found. But according to people's memories, when they're found, no one will question whether or not this is true because it will be very obvious. When people remember looking into these books, though, they see like sacred symbols, they see pictures of the earth, although none of my clients remember actually reading them, but just talks about basically the nature of reality and what we're really doing here.
Did any of your clients talk about the relationship between Arthur and Guinevere and if it matches the myths?
Nobody talked about it. No one talked about that. But what they did talk about that I found really interesting is in King Arthur's time, one of the most important things was they had such a beautiful balance between the masculine and feminine. And that's what it seems like in people's memories really set them apart from other groups because they always consulted both the man and the woman. They never made a decision unless both were consulted. And they felt that that is why they were more successful than, other, uh, groups like that. But they also felt like, I also thought it was interesting that they consulted these women of Avalon. So as I was saying before, there were so many different types of what people called Avalon, but there was also in people's memories this place in the UK that people called Avalon, which was a very powerful place because it was shrouded in mists. And so you couldn't see this landmass. And it would be completely covered in mist, so they could hide all these things. It would hide things like the red crystals in there. They would do all kinds of practices. And there were these women there, and it was only women, but King Arthur people would visit, but it was only women that were part of this group securing this particular place. And they did a lot of really powerful spiritual work. And the reason why that's so important is really we wouldn't have any of this knowledge. According to my clients, we wouldn't have any of it if it weren't for this group of women and for this place. So they really need to be revered and thanked for their sacrifice and what they really did because they safeguarded a lot of what we are able to slowly find to get today. And not only that, but the sacred knowledge that had almost been wiped out. So they really did a great job, and it's really because of them.
Are the themes of reincarnation and soul evolution talked about in your book?
Yeah, pretty much so, especially when it comes to Alice and the Knights Templar, because they did talk a lot about the information that they had learned. It was really interesting because it seems like the Knights Templar had many different practices where they would evolve themselves enough spiritually that they could receive these downloads. So they did understand a lot about reincarnation and soul evolution and how we're on a path of human enlightenment, basically. And it all really comes down to everything that people talk about all the time, where we the negativity is so needed. It's the only reason that we are able to ascend, essentially, what it all really comes down to is in people's memories, they remembered that before the earth was very like playful and had a lot of these fairy like creatures all over on this earth plane. But Earth herself was wanted to be part of the ascension. And for a while, there was a lot of creating this ascension program, creating what it might look like, so to speak. And you could see into the different dimensions, like you could see into the 3D reality and just kind of experiment by looking into it and seeing what it would look like. And it was really interesting because there's so much time of creation and everything like that. But since Earth wanted to be part of the Ascension program, it then called in these other beings that kind of have it's almost like a computer program. So they have this Ascension program that they do on these other planets. And since Earth wanted to be a part of this program, it was basically called in. And so, in a sense, what happened was they would put down this false grid, which would attract some type of negativity to it because you can't be part of the Ascension program without negativity because there's no growth without negativity. So the earth called for this. And in a sense, it's starting to move up into the evolution phase. I mean, it's been on this ascension pathway, but we're really shifting right now. We're really moving fast through this ascension program and through this shift right now. And people know this and they feel it. But essentially what happens is, in a sense, it's like destruction in order to rebuild, but you rebuild greater. You never rebuild less than you did before. And so that's essentially what we're doing. We're really fully learning, really fully going through this program.
I know you're not a psychic, but you're talking about the ascension, and that's a hot topic. Do you ever see future events? And if so, have you seen like anything that's coming for 2025?
Yeah. But keep in mind, everyone has their own timeline. Everyone has their own reality based on what they believe. And what you believe, if it's completely different than someone else, then your reality, your future might be completely different. I don't think that will be that much different than other people's co-creations in 2025. But in 2025, when people are looking into the future, they see a couple things that I thought are very interesting. What they've been talking about in my most recent sessions, as far as what's coming in 2025, is that they see that a lot of what's going on with medical technology is going to really advance quickly when it comes to surgeries. They see the use of lasers more than actual cutting into the human body. And a lot of this technology is starting to become uh, more accessible. They also see a big turn to start to recycle clothing. They see that the fashion industry is making a shift because of, um, not wanting to drain the earth's resources. They see a lot of things when it comes to like um, people's awareness of what's going on with government systems. People are becoming much more aware of what's actually going on. They see a lot of that. Um, it's funny because when I ask the higher self, what could people do in 2025 that would really, really help them? The first thing they said was drink more water. I thought that was interesting. You always hear that, but the way the higher self described humanity, it was almost like comical 'cause they described us like raisins. Like we're so dehydrated and we need more water more than ever because we need to clear out all this old trauma, that the water would be very instrumental to help us in this shift. And it's actually really interesting because when people like go into sacred places, a lot of times the higher self will tell them, make sure you're very hydrated. it seems like you can receive more downloads when you drink more water. You actually can heal yourself on a lot of different levels when you drink more water. So that is, usually my clients tell them to do that, but that was a big message, especially for this year. Um, they also talked about storms and events happening. Um, it's twofold because a lot of that is, it's that rebuilding, it's that destruction, rebuilding, and also questioning things. There's a lot of narratives going on that people will start to question, and a lot of these, some of these things are meant to help people join each other and stop being so isolated. That's something that the higher selves have been talking about, that isolation is not good for anyone. And they wish that people would spend more time in person with each other and start connecting on deeper levels, that's so healing for somebody. And some people just become way too isolated.
Well, if people want to find out more about your new book, should they go to a website or Amazon?
They can go to Amazon. It doesn't matter. It's on my website and it's on Amazon, A Hypnotist Journey to Avalon.
In March of this year, you're going to be presenting at the Sedona Ascension retreat. What will you be talking about there?
I'm going to also be talking about the Ascension, and I'm going to be talking about everything I've learned from my clients under hypnosis and more about Avalon and the different healing techniques that I've learned. And I'm just really excited for that retreat because I already know that there's so many beautiful people coming. And that's another way to really get together and be with other people and meet friends. And yeah, I'm really excited.
Is there anything else that you're working on or doing that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I teach these workshops. It's another way that I can bring people together so that they can feel, really heard and have a deeper experience. So I bring them together for these workshops for that reason, and so they can meet lifelong friends. And I love them. They're so much fun for me.
Well, if people want to reach out to you, should they do it through your website or some other way?
I always check my messages on YouTube. If you want to go to my YouTube, that's probably the best way if you want to actually talk to me. Sarah Breskman Cosme, Hypnosis.
So just leave a comment under one of your
Leave a
videos?
comment. I'll comment back.
All right. Well, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I would just like to say that the most important person to listen to is yourself, and to really start to listen more deeply to yourself. And when you do that, every single thing will start to feel more in alignment and your life will get better. And all you had to do was really just listen as deeply as you can to yourself.
Sarah, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.